In the bustling streets of Ibadan, a billionaire CEO witnessed something that would change his life. He saw one of his poorest employees, a woman with almost nothing, sharing her only meal with a disabled man. But what he did next, nobody saw coming. In one moment, his face is etched with shock inside his luxury Jeep. In the next, her face is streaked with tears of joy. It's a story of how a single act of kindness rewrote two destinies. So make sure you watch until the end to see the incredible moment that changes everything. This story unfolds at the towering glass headquarters of Adebayo Holdings, a world of polished marble, hushed corridors, and the crisp, sterile scent of money. This edifice was more than a building. It was a monument of power, a vertical kingdom of commerce that pierced the Ibadan skyline. This was the exclusive domain of its formidable CEO, Chief Alumide Adebayo, a titan of industry, known across West Africa for his impeccably sharp suits and an even sharper, more ruthless mind. His reputation preceded him in every room he entered, a whispered legend of man who could dismantle a rival company with a single phone call. He was a brilliant and celebrated businessman, but his brilliance was cold, forged in the unforgiving furnace of boardroom battles and hostile takeovers, where human emotion was a liability. He navigated his empire from a throne of Italian leather and polished steel, viewing the vibrant, chaotic world outside not as a community of people with hopes and fears, but as a complex balance sheet of assets and liabilities, a landscape of numbers to be conquered and controlled. His daily journey to work was a testament to his profound and self-imposed isolation. Sealed within the silent, air-conditioned cabin of his gleaming black Jeep, a custom-built fortress on wheels, the sprawling city of Ibadan was reduced to a muted, widescreen film playing outside his specially tinted, soundproof windows. The symphony of street vendors calls bargaining over their wares, the insistent rumble of Okada motorbikes weaving through traffic, and the brilliant kaleidoscope of colorful fabrics worn by the people were all kept at a sterile, calculated distance. This vehicle was far more than mere transport. It was a mobile fortress, a bubble of immense wealth and influence that protected him from the unpredictable, messy, and beautifully human reality of the very city from which he drew his colossal fortune. Chief Adebayo didn't truly live in Ibadan. He presided over from on high, utterly detached from the vital, rhythmic pulse of life that beat just inches away from his tinted glass. But just beyond the imposing, reflective glass walls of his corporate fortress, another, more vibrant world existed, breathing and struggling in the shadow of his success. This was Yatun's world, a reality defined not by quarterly profit margins and stock portfolios, but by the daily, grinding struggle for basic survival. A cleaner at Adebayo Holdings, Yatun was a quiet widow who was easily one of the poorest employees in the entire corporation, a fact that made her practically invisible within its hallowed, echoing halls. Her presence was ephemeral, a fleeting shape in the dim early morning light, her hands polishing the floors that men like the chief walked upon without a second thought. Her existence a silent service to a world that never acknowledged her. Her clothes were faded from countless washings and meticulously mended in several places, a patchwork of her modest history. Yet her face was not defined by hardship, but by a profound and quiet kindness that seemed to emanate from her very soul, a light that no amount of poverty could extinguish. Yatun's poverty was a constant, grinding reality that dictated the rhythm of her every day. It was a careful, anxious calculation of every single naira, the worn thin soles of her only pair of sensible shoes that she prayed would last another month, and the gnawing, persistent uncertainty of how she would ever afford an unexpected expense, like a sudden illness or a hike in rent. Her daily meal, often just a small, humble bowl of rice and beans, was a result of painstaking, disciplined budgeting, a precious resource she could not afford to waste or take for granted. Yet, this profound and unending scarcity did not harden her heart or embitter her spirit. Instead, it seemed to carve out a cavernous space within her for a deep and resilient empathy, a quiet strength that was far more valuable and enduring than anything held within the subterranean vaults of the building where she worked. This inner wealth, this unshakable grace, manifested in a small, unnoticed ritual she performed every single morning without fail. Across the busy, traffic-choked street from the shimmering headquarters, under the sprawling, ancient branches of a colossal mango tree, sat an elderly man named Baba Sola. His legs, weakened by age and ravaged by a long unattended illness, had long since surrendered their strength, leaving him bound to his small patch of earth at the base of the tree. To the thousands of people who hurried past each day, their minds occupied with their own destinations and concerns, he was all but invisible, his eyes averted, rendering him just another unfortunate part of the urban scenery. But Yatan never looked away. She always saw him. Every morning, before her shift began, she would navigate the dangerous road, sit on the dusty ground beside him, and open her small, steaming bowl. Patiently and gently, as if he were her own father, she would spoon the food into his mouth, her movements full of a deep, human tenderness that asked for nothing in return and expected no audience. This wasn't a one-time act of charity to appease a guilty conscience. It was her daily, unwavering routine, a silent pact of care and dignity in a world that had seemingly forgotten them both. One sweltering Tuesday morning, the meticulously planned, clockwork rhythm of Chief Adebayo's life was thrown into utter chaos. A lorry carrying textiles had overturned on his usual, direct route to the office, creating a complete and immovable standstill, a traffic jam so immense that it forced the entire city to abandon its routines and find new, unfamiliar paths. His driver, flustered and profusely apologetic, was forced to take a series of winding, bumpy detours through side streets the chief had never seen before, roads teeming with level of life and activity that felt alien to him. Annoyance simmered in the Billionaire. A delay was an inefficiency, a disruption to profit, a flaw in the system that he prided himself on mastering. It was from this place of supreme irritation that his gaze drifted idly out the window, scanning the unfamiliar environment with disdain, and then froze. His driver's desperate detour had led them right past the old mango tree. "Stop the car," the chief commanded, his voice sharp and sudden, startling his driver into slamming the brakes. His entire focus, his entire world, was now fixed on a scene unfolding just feet away. He saw the woman in the faded, threadbare clothes, a uniform he vaguely recognized as belonging to his company's extensive but anonymous cleaning staff, carefully and patiently spooning food into the mouth of a frail, disabled man. It was such a simple, quiet, and profoundly intimate moment. Yet for Chief Adebayo, a man accustomed to grand gestures, strategic power plays, and ostentatious displays of charity at galas, it was utterly and completely bewildering. The unhurried tenderness in her actions, the patient way she waited for the old man to swallow each mouthful before offering another, the genuine smile she gave him. It was a currency he couldn't calculate, a transaction with no discernible profit. For a man who saw the world in the stark black and white of spreadsheets and financial reports, this was like seeing in vivid, breathtaking color for the very first time. Who was this woman, this ghost from the lowest rungs of his corporate ladder? And why on earth was she giving away what was so clearly all she had in the world to a complete stranger? The image was seared into his mind, a permanent brand on his consciousness. He eventually returned to his office, but the familiar scent of money, power, and expensive leather did nothing to calm the storm of thoughts raging within him. He sat in a crucial, high-stakes meeting about a billion-naira merger, surrounded by his top executives. But his mind wasn't on the intricate presentation or the complex financial models being displayed. Instead, he saw the woman's gentle, calloused hands, the small bowl of steaming rice, and a look of profound, soulful gratitude in the old man's eyes. This simple act of unrewarded, unobserved kindness haunted him throughout the day, creating a jarring dissonance that his logical, transactional brain could not resolve or file away. It was a puzzle far more complex and compelling than any market trend or financial projection he had ever faced. He felt a strange, unfamiliar stirring deep within him, a disquieting feeling that for all his towering success and immense wealth, his own life was profoundly and devastatingly empty of whatever elemental truth he had just witnessed under that mango tree. His initial fascination quickly morphed into a quiet, all-consuming obsession. The very next day, he instructed his driver to forget the main, efficient route entirely, and to instead take him back to that same side street. He had them park at a discreet distance, partially hidden by a row of vibrant market stalls, so he'd watch the entire ritual unfold without being seen, feeling like a spy in his own city. He did this for a full week, each day becoming a silent observer of the same unwavering dedication. He saw her on a bright, sunny morning when the heat was oppressive, and he saw her again on a day when a light, persistent drizzle fell from the sky, soaking her thin clothes. Her commitment never faltered. Her gentle routine never changed. This consistent, selfless act, performed without any audience or hope of recognition, systematically dismantled any cynical thought that it could be a performance for some hidden camera or potential benefactor. It was genuine, it was real, and its unadorned authenticity shook him to his very core. Finally, unable to reconcile the extraordinary woman he watched from his car with the anonymous, insignificant employee number she represented on his payroll, he took an unprecedented and shocking step. He descended from his penthouse office and walked down to his human resources department, sending a palpable wave of panic and confusion to the staff who had never once seen the great CEO in their modest offices. He ignored their flustered greetings and pulled Yutun's file himself, his manicured hands feeling the cheap, thin paper. The stark, typed words on the page painted a bleak and unremarkable picture. Yutun de Nicolapo, widow, no children, employed for 3 years, earning the absolute minimum wage, with a spotless record of perfect performance and attendance. There was nothing in the official file, nothing in the cold, hard data, that could possibly explain her extraordinary, illogical, and deeply moving generosity. The chief stared at the file, then out his panoramic window at the skyscrapers bearing his name, and felt a profound, undeniable sense that something absolutely essential was missing from his own life. A cynical, familiar thought began to creep into the chief's mind, a well-honed defense mechanism from a lifetime of dealing with people who always, without exception, wanted something from him. Was this truly real? Could anyone in this world, a world he knew to be driven by self-interest, be this fundamentally good without an angle? In his world, every action had a hidden motive. Every kindness was a strategic investment, and every relationship was transactional. He reasoned that perhaps this was an elaborate, long-term performance, a clever and patient strategy designed to eventually attract the attention of a wealthy benefactor. Someone just like himself. The thought was ugly and diminished the beauty of what he'd seen, but it was also comfortable, as it placed her inexplicable actions back into a framework he understood and could control. He decided he had to know for sure. He would put her character to the ultimate, definitive test, with the same meticulousness and strategic thinking of a business strategist planning a corporate takeover. He planned the operation. He called in a trusted senior manager, a man with a well-earned reputation for unshakable discretion and loyalty, and handed him a thick, heavy envelope. Inside was a life-changing amount of cash, enough money to solve every one of Yutun's conceivable problems and secure her future for years to come. The chief gave his manager a set of very specific instructions. Dress in simple, unassuming clothes to avoid intimidation, approach her immediately after a morning ritual with Baba Sola, and explain the generous offer with gentle, undeniable logic. The story was simple. His wealthy, anonymous boss was deeply moved by her kindness, but was also terribly worried that she was making herself late for work, and, more importantly, neglecting her own needs by giving away her food. The money was a gift, a reward for her good heart, given on one simple, non-negotiable condition, that she would agree to stop. The manager approached Yutun as instructed the next morning, his own heart pounding slightly at the sheer strangeness of the mission he was undertaking. He intercepted her just as she was packing up her empty bowl, the faint smell of rice still in the air, and he explained the incredibly generous offer, holding out the heavy, promise-filled envelope. Yutun looked at the envelope, a symbol of a life free from worry, a future she couldn't even dare to dream of, a reality where she wouldn't have to count every single naira. For a long, silent moment, she stared at the cash that could change everything for her, the solution to all her earthly problems. Then she looked up at the manager, her gaze clear, unwavering, and utterly without greed, and she gently pushed the envelope back toward him. "Please, tell your boss to use his money to help others who are truly in need," she said, her voice soft but infused with firm, unbreakable resolve. "I cannot take payment for being human. Baba Sola needs me. His well-being is not for sale, and neither is my duty to him." Meanwhile, Yutun's quiet, routine life had been pierced by a new and growing anxiety that was beginning to overshadow her days. She had started to notice the gleaming black Jeep, a vehicle so out of place in this part of the city, that was now parked down the street every single morning. Its presence was unnerving, a silent, powerful and mysterious observer in her humble world, its tinted windows reflecting her own small figure back at her. A deep and unsettling sense of unease began to settle in her heart, a knot of worry that tightened with each passing day. She finally confided in a coworker, another cleaner with whom she shared her meager lunches, who listened with wide, fearful eyes and immediately voiced her own deeply ingrained fears. "Be careful, you tund," the friend warned, her voice a low, urgent whisper as they polished the executive boardroom table. "Powerful men like the chief don't take an interest in people like us unless we are in some kind of serious trouble. I think you could be fired." The co-worker's well-intentioned warning planted a seed of pure, unadulterated terror in Yatun's heart. The fear took root and began to grow, its tendrils wrapping around her thoughts. Was she being watched because she was taking too long on her break before her shift even officially began? Had someone, a manager or a passerby, complained about her sitting on the street? The luxury car, once just a symbol of a world away, now felt like a predator stalking its prey, a constant, menacing reminder of how precarious her existence truly was. It became an ominous symbol of a world that could, and often did, crush people like her without a second thought, without a moment's hesitation, for reasons they would never even understand. The simple, beautiful, and pure act of feeding Baba Sola was now tainted with creeping, paralyzing fear that made her hands tremble each morning as she crossed the street. The verbal report from his manager about Yatun's stunning refusal landed on Chief Oyamai's expensive mahogany desk like a final judgment. Her words, relayed with precision by the awestruck manager, "I cannot take payment for being human," echoed in the vast, silent space of his office, completely shattering the last remnants of his cynical worldview. He was left with nothing but profound, humbling sense of awe and a deep, burning shame for ever doubting her, for daring to believe her soul could be purchased. He knew then, with absolute certainty, that he could no longer watch from a distance. Being a passive, hidden observer now felt cowardly, inadequate, and fundamentally wrong. At the same time, rumors were already flying through the executive floors of Adebayo Holdings about the CEO's strange new morning routine and his distracted, distant mood in high-level meetings. His world demanded decisive action, and for the first time his soul now agreed. He knew he had to face her, not as a CEO, but as a man. That morning, as a familiar black Jeep approached a familiar street, the chief's command to his driver was different. It wasn't the usual quiet instruction to park discreetly behind the market stalls. "Stop here," he ordered, his voice resonating with a new, unshakable finality that surprised even himself. Directly in front of the mango tree. The driver, stunned by the direct command to stop in the most conspicuous spot possible, brought the massive vehicle to a halt with a jolt. Before the driver could even move to perform his duty and open the door, the chief reached out and opened the heavy, soundproof door himself. The vibrant, chaotic, unfiltered noise of the Ibadan street rushed into the silent cabin. The shouting, the laughter, the music, a world he had intentionally kept at bay for decades. His emergence in the car was a monumental event, a breach of the natural order of things that sent a shockwave down the entire block. The entire street fell utterly silent. The rhythmic, melodic calls of hawkers selling their wares died in their throats. Children paused their games of football mid-stride, their eyes wide, and ongoing conversations evaporated into thin air as if a switch had been flipped. Every single eye was fixed on the unbelievable, almost hallucinatory sight. It was the great Chief Adebayo, the ghost in the machine, the powerful man from the billboards and the newspaper headlines, stepping out onto the dusty red earth of their street. The fine hand-woven fabric of his expensive, pristine white agbada swept the ground as he began to walk with slow, deliberate steps, not toward a business associate or a waiting limousine, but toward a lowly cleaner and a disabled man sitting under a tree. The universe of the street had been tilted on its axis. Yatun looked up, her hand frozen in midair as she held a spoon filled with rice just inches from Baba Sola's mouth. Her eyes widened with sheer, unadulterated terror. Her friend's warning screamed in her ears like a siren. This was it, the moment she had been dreading for weeks. The most powerful man she had ever seen was walking directly toward her, his face a mass of unreadable emotion, and she was certain, with a chilling finality, that her life was about to be ruined over a simple act of kindness. But then, the chief did something so completely unexpected, so radically humble, that it sent a collective gasp rippling to the stunned and silent crowd of onlookers. He, The powerful billionaire, the untouchable titan of industry, knelt. The knees of his pristine, immaculate white clothing, worth more than she earned in a year, touched the red abode on earth without a moment's hesitation or concern for the dirt, bringing him down to their level on the ground. This singular act of profound, shocking humility instantly dismantled his immense power and stripped away his intimidating aura. He was no longer a chief, a CEO, or a billionaire. He was simply a man, brought to his knees by an act of goodness he could not comprehend, and a purity he now desperately wanted to understand. His gaze, when it met Yatun's terrified one, was no longer sharp, calculating, and intimidating. It was soft, vulnerable, and filled with a desperate, almost pleading curiosity. He asked her, his voice quiet, but carrying with perfect clarity through the silent air for all to hear. Why? Why do you do this for him every day? Stunned into absolute breathless silence, Yatun could only stare at the powerful man kneeling in the dust before her, his expensive clothes now stained with the earth they shared. The image was so surreal, so completely outside the realm of possibility in her world, that it took a long moment for his simple, direct question to even register in her mind. As she looked at him, truly looked at him for the first time not as a terrifying figure of authority, but as a curious man, the fear that had been her constant companion for weeks finally began to recede, washed away by the undeniable sincerity radiating from his eyes. It was replaced by the simple, unshakable truth of her actions, a truth that was the very bedrock of her existence. She glanced at the kind, wrinkled face of Baba Sola, who looked just as bewildered by the scene, and then looked back at the billionaire. When she finally found her voice, it was steady and clear, holding a quiet certainty that no amount of money could ever buy or compromise. Her answer was not an excuse or a justification. It was a simple, elegant statement of her core philosophy, a fundamental truth she lived by every single day of her life. Baba Sola has no family, she answered, her voice resonating with a quiet dignity that filled the silent space between them. He has no one. If I don't help him, who will? In this city, we are all we have. We are all one family in this city, even if we do not know each other's names. The words, so simple yet so profound, struck Chief Adebayo's soul like a bolt of lightning, illuminating the darkness of his own solitary existence. In that singular, transformative moment, he understood everything. He had spent his entire life building an empire of assets, managing human resources as numbers, and creating staggering wealth. Yet this woman, who had absolutely nothing in material terms, understood what true wealth actually was. It wasn't in stockpiling resources for oneself, but in recognizing that the invisible bonds of shared humanity were the most valuable and precious asset of all. Slowly, almost reverently, Chief Adebayo rose to his feet. He was a transformed man, visibly different from the person who had arrived just minutes before. When he stood up, it was not just his body getting up from the ground. His entire worldview, his very reason for being, had been lifted from the dirt to a higher, more meaningful plane. The sharp, calculating glint that usually defined his eyes was gone, completely replaced by the warm, burning passion of newfound, electrifying purpose. He looked at Yatun not as an employee, but as a teacher with a deep and abiding respect. He then turned to face the crowd, which had now grown significantly larger, a silent sea of faces drawn by the incredible spectacle of the city's richest man kneeling on the ground. He felt an overwhelming, undeniable need to share a profound lesson he had just been taught by the poorest woman he employed. He looked directly at Yatun, ensuring she and everyone else could hear his proclamation clearly. His voice, a tool usually used to command boardrooms and intimidate competitors, now rang with a new kind of authority. The authority of deep moral conviction. You have taught me a lesson today more valuable than all my years in business. A lesson I was blind to, he announced, his voice booming with emotion across the silent street. Because of this, from this day forward, you will no longer work as a cleaner in my company. A nervous gasp and a wave of anxious, confused murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Was this a public firing? After all this, after this incredible display, was he heartlessly dismissing her? Yatun's heart hammered violently against her ribs, and she braced herself for the final, cruel blow. The chief let the heavy suspense hang in the air for a single, dramatic heartbeat, and then a wide, genuine smile, The first minute ever seen on his famously stern face broke through a serious expression, lighting up his entire face. Instead, he continued, his voice now filled with a soaring, infectious joy, you will work as a founding director of the new Adebayo Cares Foundation. Your first and most important job will be to lead our new multi-billion naira program to provide shelter, nutritious food, and lasting dignity for the city's elderly and disabled. He then turned his warm, smiling gaze to the stunned old man who was watching with tears in his eyes. And Baba Sola, he said with a gentle, reassuring smile, will have a new home, the best medical care money can buy, and a full table of delicious food for the rest of his life. Starting today. The crowd erupted in cheers as Yatun's eyes filled with tears of pure joy. Chief Adebayo was true to his word. The Adebayo Cares Foundation was born, with Yatun as its proud and compassionate leader, proving that kindness is not about what you have, but what you give. The chief, a man who had everything, finally found the one thing he was missing, joy. He learned the purpose of great wealth wasn't to build walls, but to build bridges. One small, quiet act ended up changing countless lives, reminding us of the Yoruba proverb, a ki ifi owo kan fi mo Aaron. One hand alone cannot lift the meat to the mouth. We all need each other. If this story touched your heart, please show your support. Hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more videos that celebrate the best of humanity.